Welcome everybody from the Sparx Systems YouTube channel, and welcome back to our urban parking system being developed in Enterprise Architect. My name's Scott Hebbard. I'm joined by Stephen Maguire today, and I understand we're looking at business process modeling and notation, but this time we're looking at a level 3 diagram including things like swim lanes. So is that correct? And what are you going to talk to us about today, Stephen?
Scott, thank you for the introduction. Always delighted to be here. And yes, we're going to continue our looking at the business processes and in particular, taking our existing model down another level. So listeners may have watched the previous videos on the creation of business processes. If you haven't, I encourage you to go back and have a look at those. But let's get started and take a dive into this topic. As always, we start by looking at our perspective, which we set from the top right-hand corner of the application. There a drop down here. I've been working on some glossary models earlier today, and I now need to change my focus to business modeling. So there's a business modeling perspective set, and in particular, the business process model and notation, commonly referred to by its acronym BPMN. So we'll set that perspective, and notice the tool changes to set our focus on that. We have got a number of patterns here, which we've looked at in previous videos, and we've got some business process diagrams. They will save you a lot of time if you are starting a model. But what I want to do, as always, is begin things from first principles. Then once you understand that, you can return and use some of these productive patterns. So I'll close that builder page, and now we need to find a location for these models in the project browser. So we have a number of packages to find, and we have business models to find, and we've done some business cases, collaboration diagrams, conversation diagrams, choreography diagrams, and we actually have some business processes as well. So let's start with that opening diagram and see if we can navigate our way through. So this is the first diagram that comes up, and it has actually got the business processes on it. So there are a number of high-level business processes there, and you can see that we had keyed those into the value chain. So the business process managed infrastructure was keyed into the firm infrastructure. And just to recap on that, if we look at this one and say find in all diagrams, you'll see that it's part of the value chain, and that links us back to the value chain world, which is a higher level strategic model. But let's continue our journey with respect to business processes, and we can click through on this, or drill down, as some people prefer to call it. The business processes have a small icon in the bottom right corner, which indicates that we can drill down or hyperlink to another diagram. We're going to follow this chain here, the manage parking reservations. So we'll double click on this element, and you notice we immediately get taken to a lower level diagram. So we'll drill down into this diagram, and you can see that on this diagram there are a number of elements, a number of tasks here: make reservation, monitor reservations, and purge. And this one, the make reservations, has got a little plus sign on it. Now this indicates that it is a sub-process. So let's make sure that that is a sub-process, and you can see that this plus sign is there. So we're going to click through on that and see where we get to. Again, we come down to another level of diagram. So Enterprise Architect is doing this work of drilling down for us. And if you notice in the tab of the diagram, then there's a little arrow to the right of that, and that allows me to effectively what I call drill up. So instead of drilling down, we're going to drill up. So we can click on this little arrow, we get back to the next level, and we can then click on it again and get back to...
Stephen, how does the level of detail between each level of diagram, how does it change as you drill down?
Fantastic question, Scott. And, that is the really important thing to understand when drawing these diagrams, that at this high level, you've got the very high level processes, the managing customers, managing permits, managing parking reservations. And as you drill down, you come down into slightly more detail. So we're now looking at managing reservations, but we've got a make reservation, a monitor, and a purge. So it's like the next level of detail. And it's a challenge for people that are new to this business processing world to be able to create those levels. Effectively, if you thought about an organization, the highest level belonged to the strategy people. I guess the next level down belonged to the managers, the high level managers, the next level down to the line managers, perhaps, and the next level down to the people that are actually doing the work. And that's where we're going to focus today, Scott. We're going to take this down to the level where people are actually performing tasks on the floor, if you like. So what we're going to look at is we've got this process. We've got validating request is a task, and checks, security alerts, event parking, multi-level parking, accessibility and specialized parking reservations, and then we've got to send customer notification. So we're going to drill down on this one. And the first part of this process is firstly to create a child diagram. So we want a diagram that is going to be the next level down. Very simple, right mouse click, and from the context menu, new child diagram and composite structure diagram. An enterprise architect does that work and it creates the diagram. The other thing we need to do is to say that this is a sub-process. So the activity type is not a task anymore, it's a sub-process. So now if we can now drill down into this level. We've got a blank diagram, so this is indicating that we need to do some work, Scott. And again, I can click back up to the previous diagram and drill back up and down again at will. So this diagram is an important one because different people may be doing different tasks. Now that might have occurred in previous diagrams, but it's much more pertinent here at this level. So what we're going to use is what people commonly call swim lanes, but more formally in the business process model and notation, they're called pools and lanes. Now this isn't something that Enterprise Architect created or the people at Sparx decided to put into the toolbox. It is part of the BPMN specification. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a pool on the diagram. So
what's the difference between a pool and a lane?
Well, Scott, good question, and very much like what you see at a swimming pool. The pool is the whole structure, and the lanes divide the pool up into a number of different channels, if you like, or swim lanes. So the important thing about the pools is that they're typically different organizations or very distinct parts of your organization that don't communicate with each other. So and they only would communicate via sending messages. But let's put this pool in and see what happens. Now, Enterprise Architect follows the specification, allowing you to either orientate the pool and the lanes horizontally on the canvas or vertically. And a lot of people tend to default to the horizontal orientation. And, that's sometimes incredibly useful. And it depends upon what you're going to model and how that will play out. So I generally draw a little sketch of kind of what I think the model might look like. Just, a 2-minute sketch and just say, is it better to do this vertically or vertically or horizontally? In this case, I'm going to change it to vertically, just so that because people aren't necessarily as familiar with this, and it will open people's minds to a different way of working. Conveniently, on the right-hand side of the pool element, there are a number of icons, the quick linker and other ones for setting styles. But we have this additional one here, which is showing that we can convert the horizontal pool into a vertical pool, which I'm going to do now. So now it's a vertical pool, and we're going to name that the urban parking system. So we'll just rename that pool. And the other thing, Scott, is that I like to do is I like to, as you know, put in notes for the elements that I'm creating so that people understand what it's about. So there it is. I've got my pool, my vertical pool. Now I'm just going to make this a little bit larger because I'm expecting that I'm going to have, quite a few elements in here. So I'm going to make it, approximately maybe the height about 500, something like that. So I think that's where I'll be what I'll need, about that much. And the width is about 700. Probably we might make that just a little bit wider as well. So I'm just kind of preparing myself for the work that I'm going to do. Having created that pool, I'm now going to drop a swimming lane into it, and this one is going to be for the customer liaison, the left-hand one, sort of the point of interaction with the customers. So I choose lane from the toolbox, and I drop that on. And notice that Enterprise Architect has known already that that's going to be a vertically orientated one. And I'll just move that over a bit if it's about the kind of space that I think I'll need. And I'll drop another lane in there. And let's move that one over a little bit, and I'll rename these as I go along, I think. So let me just put them in first and get them orientated. And there's my third lane there. So that's all looking quite good. And I need to now name these lanes. So this one here, I'm going to name customer liaison, and I'm going to put some notes in that as well so that people understand what that is. Well, got some notes in there. The second one I'm going to look at is a quality manager, so someone who's going to be looking at the quality of this, of this activity that's going on and making sure that all of the right information is there. So the next one I'm going to put in is the reservation agent. So this is just setting up the lane, Scott. It's kind of quite easy to do in Enterprise Architect. It's all kind of doing lots of kind of magic for you under the hood of lining things up and whatnot. So I'll do that, and I can change the width of this at any point if I want to, and just make it bigger, and just resize that lane to fit into there. So let's just leave that for the moment. We'll just move that lane over a little bit and lock it into there, and we'll make a little bit of more space here. Might need a bit of space there. So we'll come back and and reconfigure these things in a minute, but you can see how easy it is just to move them around. Now, what I like to do, Scott, is something which is a little bit of a trick of the trade, if you like, but really important thing for people to know about, which is the setting of these things to being unselectable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select all these elements for the moment, and I can, there's a few little borders there. I'll fix those up right at the end. That's not a problem. But I'm going to go in here and say behavior, make non-selectable. Now what that does is it means that I can freely move things around in the tool. So I'm going to drop a start. I'm going to start this whole thing with a start event, and we'll say that there's a message that's been received, and we'll make that an event parking request. So let's put that in there, and let's put some notes in there as well for how this thing starts. So, and then Scott, it all becomes very easy. And if you followed the previous videos, you'll see that it's actually very simple from here to start doing some work. So I'll move this event around here, and I'll just put the text up there for the moment. So lots of freedom there to create the diagram exactly as you want it. I might want to, make that a bit wider. So this is all up to the modeler themselves to decide, how they want to do this. So I can just use the quick linker now, which is this little arrow key. Come down here, and I'm going to say I want to go to immediately into an activity, and it's going to be validate request. And I'm going to say it's a user activity, meaning that it could be some system intervention, it could be some human intervention, and I'll say validate request. So quite a normal thing to be doing when someone's making some kind of reservation or booking to validate the request that's coming.
It's always nice if you get something back to know that it's gone through and has worked.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some notes again that I've put in for that, and we can just keep continuing that process. I'll just go down here to this time to a gateway that, different things could happen, couldn't they?
Yep.
They could be, could be valid, may not be valid. So there's a number of different choices there for gateways, and this is part of the BPMN specification: exclusive, complex, inclusive, parallel, and event. Now, the ones that are most common, Scott, are probably the exclusive, the parallel, and the inclusive, probably in that order. So the exclusive one says, look, this will happen or that will happen. It will be valid or it won't be valid.
Yep.
Discrete outcomes. The parallel one is a gateway that says that two or more things can happen as a result of the gateway being fired or a decision being made. So, an example would be in a review process for an employee, they might get both a wage increase and also a promotion. So the two things could happen at once. They're not exclusive or mutually exclusive. But let's go for the exclusive one here, and let's continue our thing down here and say, look, if this happens, let's send a notification to the motorist. Send notification, and I'll just put, it's an invalid request notification, so we know that that's what it's about. And I'm going to name this gateway here, and I like to put question marks on them, Scott, to make sure that people know that it's question.
It's actually asking a question.
Yeah, and we can continue that now, and we can move these things, like I said, around at our will. Just put those over there with the pools and lanes made non-selectable. It means that I can just very quickly just lasso these elements, move them over to something in the center. So lots of flexibility there, Scott, for people to be creating and moving the things around themselves. Enterprise Architect is doing a huge amount of work there for you. I can go into the layout ribbon and make sure these things are aligned vertically. I can space them vertically as well. So lots of magic there happening with that alignment panel of the layout ribbon. One of my friends while I'm working for sure. And now I can simply continue this into a different lane. I'll click that one, place the cursor where I think I want it to go, activity, sequence flow 2, and I'll go here. Let's make this check event selection. So this isn't a demonstration of all of the semantics of this particular model. And what I'm really wanting to show people is not how the urban parking meter system works, but rather how we model these kind of things in Enterprise Architect. So you can see that that's moving along. I can just keep continuing this thing right over into the other part, lane here. So you can see how easy that is to do. And so what I'm going to get you to do, Scott, I'll finish this diagram off, but in the meantime, I'll get you to perform some time travel magic, and I'll see you back here in just a few seconds.
Welcome back. I've conducted a little bit of time travel and editing magic, and now I can see that our diagram has lots of bright colors, and I can see the different lanes in the pool. So Stephen, can you perhaps tell us what this little diagram does and how we've now added a bit more detail to our business process modeling and notation diagram?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, we have finished the diagram. And remember, the focus of this video is not so much on the semantics of the urban parking system, but more on how you can get great results out of the tool and make expressive narratives that describe what's actually happening in your business world. So you'll have, in your own world, you'll have a different pool's name, and different pools, you'll have different lane names, obviously. But what we were able to see is how we can orientate these lanes vertically or horizontally. And the specification doesn't actually tell you exactly what the meaning of a lane is. It leaves it much more open to you. Typically, people use the lane to represent the person or group or team that has responsibility for the activities and the gateways that are inside that particular lane. So, the quality manager is checking the event selection and, checking the parking tower location. So the gateways, again, are there. We talked about those before. And, let's have a quick look at something else. Have a look at this check parking location, like parking tower location there. We could add another element or connected to that, and we could go back up to this thing here. We've just noticed that there's a kind of a activity that hasn't got its things on it there, and we're going to go through that process there. So the take-home message is create your pool, put your lanes into it, and the number of lanes you want. I encourage you to kind of have just a little bit of a think about, how you want your lanes orientated. You could see that the right-hand lane, the reservation agent here, I made a little bit bigger because I knew that there was going to be, some more elements in there. But no problem if they're not the right size. Very easy in the tool just to drag them across, make them larger. And the other trick that I introduced was this idea of making these lanes and pools non-selectable. So I've made them back, making them selectable again. But just to show that again, I can multi-select or lasso all of those elements, and I can then right mouse click, use the power of the context menu, make non-selectable. That's for the entire group. And now, when I come in here, I'm not going to be moving lanes around or pools around. It's very easy for me now just to, select elements and just, move them around at will. So remember,
that really prevents you from accidentally making mistakes and
and gives you the opportunity to make them rigorous while you move the other things around. And if you need to change the width of them or anything like that, again, you can just multi-select them and make them all selectable again. So let's say that this is what we've done with this diagram. Your diagrams might be more complex than this, but as always, you need to, when you're modeling, to keep things at the right level of abstraction and the right level of detail. And that was a question you asked earlier, Scott. Yes. How do you know? Well, you don't typically want 300 elements on a page. On a single page like this in a diagram, probably somewhere between, I don't know, 15 maybe and 40. That's going to be enough elements. If you're getting more than that, you probably need to break it down into different levels of processes.
No, I think that's great advice. Well, thanks for showing us how to build the diagram and showing us how it can be used in Enterprise Architect to describe a situation. To all of our audience, as always, if you've liked this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to the Sparx Systems YouTube channel. We always value your feedback, and it's great to hear from you. And if you have any questions about this particular model, please feel free to reach out to Stephen using his LinkedIn details below or via his website. As always, thanks, Stephen, for producing some great content, some great diagrams. I've learned a bit about some tips for how to make sure the pools and lanes aren't selectable, so that you can just focus on the element. And I've learned a little bit about how to drill down and to create some detailed diagrams. So thanks once again.
Always a pleasure to be here, Scott.